Good morning, everyone. Today is April 1st, 2025, April Fool's Day, so watch out for the tricksters. And this is the meeting of the Council Subcommittee on Water Issues. Roll call.
Chairperson Rusing.
Here.
Member Freeworth.
Here.
Member Gambogi.
I am here.
All are present.
Thank you. Before we get started, we had a request from City staff, Mr. Ruiz, to move item F from the very end and move it up and put it in after item B. Do I have to make a motion for that?
Yes, you do.
Okay. I move that we do move item F up to after item B.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Yep.
Passes unanimously.
Item A, approval of March 4th, 2025 Council Subcommittee on Water Issues meeting minutes.
Do we have any changes? Mr. Gambogi had an excused absence. Do I hear a motion?
I move to approve the minutes of March 4th as amended.
Second?
You got a motion and second, you need a vote.
We did vote. We all voted. I guess, did it pass?
It's not recording yours, Ted. I'm assuming you're a yes.
Oh, Ted was absent. Yeah. Sorry.
Passes 201.
Thank you.
Next item, presentation discussion regarding the long-term water management plan progress report.
Good morning, Subcommittee. Leslie Grazer, Public Works Water Resource Project Manager. We're excited to be in front of you today and give you a little bit of an update on what we've been doing on this project. I want to devote almost entirely the time to Mr. Herb Dishlip as the lead consultant to run through the high points of the slides that you have in your packet, and then I'll follow up at the end with like 3 little items, I think. So I'm going to turn it over to him directly, and I think he's going to move to the middle podium.
Leslie, I have a question before we get started. Just for clarification, this is called the long-term water management plan. It's not the regional water management plan.
Correct. This is designated for the city.
Okay.
However, we do serve somewhat regionally.
Yes.
So that, I think, is a confusion. Our service area
Okay.
extends up into Chino Valley,
Okay.
outside of city limits a little bit.
Right.
And the tribe, of course, is served.
Okay.
So
So it is regional, but unofficially regional.
it's our entire service area. If we start moving regional, that, in my opinion, that would be when you're doing more with the town of Chino Valley, who has their own operating system,
Right.
more with Prescott Valley, who has their own operating systems.
Okay.
Those kinds
All
of
righty. Thank you for the clarification.
Yes, ma'am.
Good morning, Herb.
Hello, my name's Herb Dishlip. I'm a civil engineer, water resources consultant, and under contract with the city of Prescott for many, many years. And I want to bring you up to date on the progress we've been making on the long-term water management plan. The last time I was here, we talked about the framework we were going to take off on and ask for guidance from the city council. One of the guidance points was we should meet with the subcommittee when we reach good points of discussion and bring forward where we're at. And I think we're at one of those points today to make progress on how we're going to do the work and what it is we're going to study and when we're going to study it and who's going to do the work. So we've made a kind of a lot of progress on planning to plan, which is an important first step. As you go into something like this, you got to have a direction. And we think we have a direction now, but we want to review that direction with the council and get any feedback that you might have. So with that, I'll start in on the slides. And I think you guys can see that okay, right? And I do have to apologize if I misread something. I've had cataract surgery on this eye, so I can see with one eye, but I can't see. So if I misread things,
One good eye.
I have an excuse, yes. So we want to talk about the framework. And one of the keys to our framework of doing this study is we did a lot of research on what's been done before. And we want to build on what's been done before. We don't want to start from scratch. We want to say there's a lot of things we already know because they've been studied, they've been analyzed, they're in place. And then there's other things we don't know. And those are the things we want to focus some attention on in this study, is to figure out what we don't know, and is there a good way to find out what we need to know. So some of the keys were our water resources management model, which you've seen that before. It's one of the key points of progress is that model has now been updated through 2024. So we have included in the model all of the data going back to 2012, but we also are up to date. And that's a key step because we want to start with a knowledge base that's current. And we now have updated through the efforts of the city staff. They've gone through and added all the new customers, all the water use, brought in the water deliveries in 2024. So we're starting with a good foundation with the worm. We also recently did the update on the assured water supply designation. So we did a lot of study on what our supplies are for that effort for DWR. And it is ongoing, and they've had questions, and we've responded, or we're preparing to respond. But one of the points on assured supply is they use their own terminology. They have their own definitions, regulatory definitions, that don't always fit in a planning context. For example, they look at what has the city committed to as committed demand, but they have a regulatory definition of what that is. On the other hand, the city has its own definition of what committed demand is. They've made commitments through things that aren't ready for final plat. And so we'll look at things on a broader scale than the assured water supply. But the assured water supply is a key component of doing this planning study, and it is up to date. Another key component is infrastructure, and that's a water and wastewater models prepared by Corolla Associates. They're also a long-term consultant to the city. They updated their wastewater and water models in 2023, did a really nice job of incorporating potential growth. They've looked at a long-term planning horizon for where infrastructure is necessary and where pipeline extensions might be needed, things like that. And that's a really good basis for looking to build on. Groundwater is an important component. That's our supply. And unfortunately, nobody can see underground. So you have to build these computer models to try to pretend you can see underground. And we have a good basis for that because the Department of Water Resources developed an extensive model for the Prescott AMA, but we're just a part of the Prescott AMA. So we have our own consultants. It used to be Southwest Groundwater, now Matrix. And as part of the assured water supply, they have taken that model and tailored it to the needs of the city of Prescott. So we're looking at where our wells are and where our recharge is. And obviously it's a common aquifer for everybody. So you have to analyze things in common, but we also need to focus on our own city uses. And that's the model built by Matrix. And we have that in place for assured supply, and we can use that for this planning study.
Excuse me,
Sure.
our big Chino Water Ranch is outside the AMA. Was that included?
That's a separate one. That's the next one on this bullet point. And we have a model study done now 10 years ago, but still a good water bottle done also by Southwest Groundwater. When we applied for assured supply back in 2007, we had to show physical availability for the Big Chino Water Ranch. And we hired a consultant to build us a model. And they did build us that model. Also, there's ongoing work in cooperation with other cities and SRP to build an updated model. But that may not be available for us for this study. If it's available, that'd be great to build on. If it's not, we do have a good basis from the Big Chino from the work that was done in 2007. And it might need a little bit of updating, but when we looked at what's going on in the Big Chino Basin, especially in our portion where our ranch is, not much has changed. So there's not a whole lot of new demand or wells. And in fact, there's been a decrease in demand out there because we've stopped pumping so much for irrigation. So that'll be plugged in, and we plan on building on that model to help us with information about the Big Chino Water Ranch. We also want to build on an updated city general plan because a lot of what we did in developing the worm was for guidance of where might there be growth and expansion. And we wanted to look especially at the land use criteria that's in the general plan. Because if it's planned for non-development, because it's undevelopable or it's open space, we wouldn't want to count on demands out there. But if it's planned for potential growth and development, then we want to be aware that the city may be interested someday in the next 50 years of annexing additional land and incorporating that kind of a look to the future.
Yeah, let me stop you right there when you're talking about our new 2025 general plan. It's still in the draft stage.
Yes.
It's going to be on the November general ballot now instead of the August primary. So we do have a few more months to work on it. I believe the deadline is May. When is the deadline that we have?
July or to make the November ballot, July
Yeah.
or August, early August.
July or early August, okay. And it has recently been brought to my attention, you know, looking at the 2025 general plan and comparing it with the 2015 general plan, that there is a lot more area added. So I just wanted to say this might change. We may have to have a discussion about this. Concerning is a lot of area up out Williamson Valley Road, which was not included in our prior general plan, which had the growth area between the airport and Prescott Valley and out 89. Thank you, Leslie.
Did you need any further information on that, or was that just a note for the record?
Yeah, I think we were. Thank you for including that map, because in our draft of our general plan, all the maps are not included as an exhibit. You know, where they're easily legible. You know, 8x12 size. They're 3x3s in the general plan, and you have to go online and click on them, blow them up, and by the time you blow them up to what, you can't really see the big picture.
Okay.
So that's an issue I have, and I think I'd like to see it changed, because most documents have exhibits, and that's what the previous 2015 general plan had, easily accessible maps so you could glance and refer back to them. But anyway, sorry for the interruption. I just wanted to tell you that our general planning area might change. Thank you.
So I'll jump in just real quick. So, you know, as staff, we've been tracking the general plan as closely as we can. I have, and I'm sure others. And we've been waiting for kind of the map to settle out, because the general plan boundary is crucial to our project, so we know how far we're planning and what the land might look like. So we've been following the land use map.
Right.
And it was just recently that we received from community development that they had, I said, what's the outline, what's the boundary, you know, so that we have that. And GIS provided it for the item you have in your packet today. Which it does look a little bit different, and that's what we were kind of waiting on, to make sure that we had the right boundary before we get too far in the weeds in our project as well. So we're watching it for you.
Yeah.
So from the standpoint of the long-term management plan, our eyes are on it.
Thank you. And also I might add that the water service area boundary remained the same from the 2015 to the 20?
It should have expanded, actually. So every year what we're required to do.
When I looked at it, I didn't see any
Any
expansion.
changes? So
Check that too.
every year we have to file a report with the annual report with the Department of Water Resources. And we have a specific task to show where we've had line expansion, and then they draw a boundary 100 feet around our lines. And that's our service area. So I also worked with our GIS, and I'm going to check. It should be on the, yeah, he should have it updated to that point. So we have a really great GIS staff that keeps us up to date. So I'll check it,
If
but
you could
we should
get
be
us
fine.
a regular 8x12 size legible map of the latest water service area boundary, so we can compare it to the old one, I think that'd be very helpful.
Yeah, we can do it. Every year it has to be updated. So we just, I believe Brian and Tracy mentioned to me, they just filed this year's annual report to the state regarding 2024.
Okay.
So, yeah, I'll take a
Now's
run
the
at it,
time
okay?
to do the changes, not after it's on the ballot.
True. Okay.
I have a question.
From experience,
Excuse me, Lois.
Before you move off this slide, I wanted to, and I don't know who this was directed to, but this past month, radio host was going on and on and on that we've gotten emails from ADWR from 2023, and we have not responded, and isn't that terrible? And I was appalled to hear it mentioned at least 3 or 4 times. And so I was like, that's not true. So I just wanted to set the record straight, because you're talking about assured designation of water supply. And I know we're still negotiating back and forth, but they made it seem like we've been asleep at the wheel for a year and a half, not responding.
The city is, I think there is, the time frame does sound correct, actually. The city received and I don't have it all in front of me today because this wasn't on topic, but so briefly we'll touch on it and then we'll have to step away from it. The decision and order is being responded to, the last efficiency letter that we did receive in like the 2023 time frame. So that's rolling back out the end of this week is what the plan is. So we can maybe work on that on another council topic that is actually agendized.
That would be good, because, that was not my understanding. So I thought we were in constant communications. Okay.
there has been some back and forth trying to get an explanation. What did you mean by this comment? So when we respond to it, we knew what we were responding to, because sometimes it wasn't all that clear.
Yeah.
But I think we're pretty well, just like Leslie said, pretty well done.
The point is, it hasn't been languishing. We've been actively responding to ADWR.
Okay. Just to finish on this slide, I want to point out there's lots of other studies that have been conducted for Prescott, for the Prescott AMA especially. So I couldn't list them all, but when you Google things on the Prescott AMA, there's lots of reports. And so there's a lot of work done. We have a good basis to keep going on. So the next part of the planning framework is a little bit of how are we going to do this? Who's going to do the work? And what we looked at was that the city staff needs support to do this work. We need support in a general sense from consultants, but we need some specific support on things like infrastructure and how expansions could take place. And we need specific support on groundwater hydrology. And so our focus has been on adding consultants to the team on doing that. One of the things we notice when we look at a lot of these kind of reports is they get bogged down in detail. That the report gets very technical and you get lost. And so one of the things we've decided the best way to deal with that is to be summarized in our reports and then have technical memoranda attached as appendices to put the details somewhere so people can see it, but not necessarily in the body of what we're doing. So that's our plan, is to use technical memoranda. The city staff will organize and conduct the public outreach program because we think public outreach is a key component of doing this kind of a plan. And if you look at nationally, nobody does planning anymore without consulting with elected officials, with stakeholders and with the general public, and it's an important component. Upon completion of certain milestones that we reach, and we talked about this in the outline originally, we will want them reviewed with the council and the Water Issues Subcommittee, and potentially we would have some kind of a meeting with stakeholders at certain key points. We haven't quite identified that yet, but we're working on it. But that's our framework.
Excuse me, Lois.
Thank you. I had two comments or needs from this. When you do and conduct public outreach programs, I would appreciate that you keep WIS involved so we could potentially participate in those and listen and hear what's coming from the voters and the public. And then the second one was the last bullet point. And this is in regards to what you started with on our last meeting as a full council. If you could reverse the order that you'd be working with the Water Issues Subcommittee, and when we get to the point that we're like, yeah, it's ready to go, then we go to the full city council. So I think that's our job, is trying to do some due diligence for the rest of the group. So thank you.
Definitely.
And also, I'd like to make a comment. We've had these public outreach meetings where it's kind of an open house and there's some poster boards and people show up and they don't really know what questions to ask. And I've had feedback where people would like a time where there's going to be a talk, more of a presentation, and then people as a group can ask questions, and they find that more enlightening. So just a comment to maybe change the format a little bit.
And I think
this
that's
is
what
technical.
we have in mind by talking about milestone points, which is we've done some studies now, and we'd like to present those, and then move on from there to now we're going to do the next phase of the study, and then we'll do that and then present. So that's kind of what we're talking about with milestones. So I think that what you're suggesting is what we have in mind. So we want to talk about Prescott. That's really important. And while Prescott shares issues with other communities, the most important part of this study is Prescott is unique. It's got a unique situation, a unique framework, a unique everything. And we want to focus on Prescott and the issues facing Prescott and starting with historic water supply development. Prescott has a unique water supply. It's developed over many years, over 100 years of looking at water supply. We want to look at the current supplies. What are our groundwater supplies? What are our surface water supplies? How do we use effluent? Is stormwater a possibility to enhance on? And then for any source of water supply we look at, we want to make sure what the water quality is to meet the need. So we have to match quality with need. And so that's a key component, and it's unique to Prescott. And I want to just stress that this whole report process is going to have to be Prescott-centric. It's really important. What other things make us unique? We just talked about, that we are a regional provider. We don't just deal with what's in our city limits. A little bit like Tucson. Tucson's a regional provider. And the council can control a lot what's within the city limits with ordinances, but we have to deal with people outside the city limits as customers and as potential new customers. We have potential potable residential and non-residential uses. We have non-potable demands like golf courses and other uses. And we want to document how that all came about and what it is that who do we serve and what do we serve and where are they geographically. Geographic is a really key component, how we display this plan. And then we want to
Excuse me, one question from Lois.
Thank you, Herb. There's been a lot of stuff on the cover of the Daily Courier talking about some parts up Williamson Valley that are having water problems. Would we end up in this, we're in essence providing water now via a hauler. Would that be all included in the scope of what you're looking at, all the parts of this county that we are now servicing?
It's clearly yes.
Good. Thank you.
Clearly yes. Everybody
Yes.
we're servicing.
That's a good point. There's wells going dry out Williamson Valley Road, and Granite Mountain Estates is one of them, and they've been using city water. The water haulers have been using our city water to provide water out there. And I just imagine as the drought wears on, we're going to be doing more and more of that. And is that going to be sustainable, or should we ask the county maybe to drill a well and provide for the people out there? You know, we need to look at that.
So I just wanted to mention there's uses that people don't think about too much, but they're important in the uniqueness of Prescott. And recreation is a key one. All 4 reservoirs we own, the 2 Goldwater Lakes and Watson and Willow, have a high recreation component to it. And it's kind of hidden because you don't think about it as a water demand, but it is a water use for sure. Fire suppression is key. And clearly, in a community like this where we have forests right in our boundaries and in our community, fire suppression water supply is a key component. And then we don't think too much about water that doesn't ever get delivered. It's lost in the system. And that's something that's a key component. That it's impossible to have a perfect system. But we would like to take a close look at what are our system losses. So the next slide we'll look at how are we going to go about the approach of building the plan. And the first one is we develop a baseline, which is what are we currently doing? And try to bring all these pieces together. People know what we're doing. The water department knows what it's doing. You know, everybody has components, but we're going to try to bring everything together in one place. So we say, here's our base case. We'll look at legal and institutional parameters, and that's a key component because water rights in the West are fundamental. There's things you might want to do, but you just can't do it because it's against the law. Or it's contrary to our permit, or it's contrary to a rule, the DWR. So we'll have a good explanation of what, as it affects Prescott, the legal and institutional parameters are. We'll look at our supply sources, each one individually, the current supplies, what we're currently using. We want to touch on the volumes of the supply, the reliability, the water quality, and then we need to distinguish natural supplies, which come from precipitation and runoff and recharge to our aquifer. But then we've also created supplies through our wastewater treatment and effluent and our recharge projects. So we want to be able to, we can differentiate our ability to capture supplies.
Are we going to be looking at future reclaimed water in this study?
Future reclaimed water, yes.
Yeah, reclaiming water, reclaiming effluent.
Reclaiming it for direct use?
Yeah, for potable.
For potable, we will look
Yeah.
at that, yes.
Okay.
And that's one of the discussions we've had with Corolla.
Okay, all right.
Because that's a emerging technology, and it's something that you don't really know that much about, and you have to find experts to talk to us about that. But we would definitely want to include that. So on to the next slide. As we develop this baseline of what the current conditions are, we want to focus on our customers. Who are they? Single family, multifamily, and the range of non-residential. We lump things as non-residential, but it's really a whole menu of customers between grocery stores and hospitals and parks and police stations. So there's all kinds of characteristics. So we want to break down a little bit more than just a big lump sum as non-residential. We want to look at, have there been any trends recently with new construction versus longer-term construction? Because we now, with the worm, can identify new customers and how much water they're using versus ones that have been here for 50 years and how much water they're using. And we'd like to see if that's an important parameter. It might not be. It might not be. Or it might be enlightening that the new customers are using more than the old. We just don't know. So we'd like to take a look at that as a baseline. We want to look closely at the conservation programs that are already in place. And the city's done a good job establishing water conservation programs. That's our baseline. We want to look at not just annual volumes, but peak volumes, because you need more water in the summertime and you need water for fire protection. And Corolla has done a lot of studies on peaking. And it's a whole different way of looking at water than annually. We want to take a review of what is our current infrastructure, from wells to pipelines, reservoirs. Storage, I differentiate from reservoirs because we have storage tanks to make sure we have pressure and fire protection, and reserve because if anything ever happened to our wells or our pipeline, we have a reserve locally through these tanks. And so that's an important component. And then we want to review what are our recharge facilities and capacities and establish here's where we are. Here's our starting point. And then we want to look at the future if nothing else changes. If we just keep doing what we're doing, we know we're going to grow. We've agreed to contracts. We've agreed to master plans. We've got intergovernmental agreements. We want to look at if everything else just stays in place without any major changes, how can we handle growth? Are we sufficient to handle it, or are we going to run into difficulty without some changes being made? What do we know? We know one thing. We do have the ability
Excuse
to
me, Lois has a question.
Sure.
Yes, thank you. There's been a lot of community discussion about, when are we going to run out? And it's like run out in the basin versus run out versus our ADWR allocation. And I think I'm so excited about taking a look at what you're doing here, because then we start, because there's all these groups now are coming forward and our project's strategic and our project's strategic. And I'm like, I hope we have enough water for all of these strategic projects. But we haven't had an answer. I've been kind of feeling like I don't understand what our bank account balance and future financial plans look like in a water basis. So I'm super excited about this. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm also glad that you're including the drought,
Yes.
which has been going on for about 30 years. It's now referred to as the mega drought. Mm-hmm. And I'm afraid it is probably the new normal.
And as we look at climate, it's a little crystal ball-y to look at climate. There's a lot of models that have been prepared on climate, and I think they can give you some guidance, but it's really hard to be accurate as you project based on climate. But what we can do is look at a range of options, which is, what if precipitation is down by 20% on the average? What is the implications of that? And it'll affect the natural recharge, and it'll affect our runoff into our reservoirs. What if happens if we go through drought flood cycles, which could happen also, which is you go a long time and then boom, you get hit by floods. What does that look like? So those are the kinds of things that the worm can take a good look at, because it incorporates surface water analysis as well. So we know that our reservoirs are there. Over a 50-year period of planning, there's going to be sedimentation. All reservoirs have some sedimentation, and they lose capacity. What are the implications of that? I don't really know. So one of the things we'd look at is if Watson Lake loses 10% of its capacity due to sedimentation, does that mean more spills? Does that mean less yield? We'll try to take a look at some of those kinds of things. And then our groundwater supply, we want to look at, can be affected by increased pumping from the common aquifer or extended droughts. We don't own the aquifer. Plus, we're limited in where we can withdraw water to the areas that we control. We own the land or in the airport area. If we want to drill wells in new areas, we might have to go out and buy land or work a lease agreement or buy a well, something like that. But our baseline would be what we have without expansion of the land area. So a lot of the reports I've read talk about the Prescott AMA and how much water's in storage. Well, that's nice, but that's not all available to Prescott. Prescott has a limited capacity to withdraw from the aquifer. And that's why, again, we want to focus in on that uniqueness of Prescott. When we look at the future, and here's some of the questions you were asking, as we look to the future beyond just the current baseline. So we know we've made commitments to Deepwell Ranch and AED and Granite. So we've looked at a lot of those things, and that'll be kind of a baseline projection. But we will also look at current focus on current customers and committed new customers. We will focus on these vacant lots. We have a lot of vacant lots, and we have potential new lots. We want to look at the approved agreements for the master plans and see how those play out over time. You can't build all those lots at once. You're going to phase them in over some period of time. And what if we have slow growth? What if we have medium growth? What if we have rapid growth? And we would look at those kinds of phasings of the growth projection. And then what we really are going to have to take a close look at, that the worm doesn't do a really good job at yet, is what about all the support water for non-residential? You can't build all those houses without grocery stores, without doctors, without hospitals. And they're not generally included in master plans. The master plans are mostly houses and rooftops. But we know that you can't just have a community that looks like that. So we have to enhance the worm a little bit to take a look at demands beyond houses. And that's what we'll look at in the future. We'll look at changes in operation to the infrastructure. We have currently planned maintenance and expansion that Corolla has done. They lay out a master plan in their models and where to expand and when to expand. We look at the currently planned wastewater treatment plant expansions, supplementary or new wells as needed. So we'll take a look at all that as we look at changes that will be made from the baseline. Then, when you start looking at alternatives, we want to look at the costs and benefits of dealing with alternatives. First of all, our supply sources. What might be, we talked about this, what might be the effects of climate change? Are there enhanced recharge opportunities beyond what we're doing now? Can we build different recharge projects in different locations that'd be better to keep our wells going? Modifications of the reservoir and how are they utilized? I don't know if there's a better way, but there might be. Enhanced wastewater treatment, that's what we're talking about with direct potable reuse. What if we go to advanced treatment? Or even what if we took our surface water and treated it instead of recharging it? What would that look like? The importation of groundwater, this is kind of where the Big Chino would come in, where the Big Chino would be an option in the future. I wouldn't call it a baseline because it doesn't exist now. But it's got its own category of the future because we own the ranch and it's included in our current assured water supply. So it's an important component that we give a good look at, importation of groundwater. And then watershed management.
Oh, and then, excuse me, going back to the Big Chino, I think people don't realize that that's already been capped, that we have an allocation of approximately, 4,500 acre feet, 4,500 acre feet for our part, and approximately, that's for Prescott Valley.
Yes.
And that people don't realize that we just can't go in there and drill as much as we want.
We can't import. They didn't say anything about drilling, but there's no point in
We
drilling
can't
if
use
you're
it.
not going to import it. Yeah. So that's how the state dealt with it. And the state dealt with importation of groundwater comprehensively. It's not just Big Chino. Mm-hmm. They pretty much put groundwater off limits for transporting into AMAs, except for narrow exceptions. And Prescott, being unique, has one of those exceptions.
Because we gave up our CAP allocation.
And you fought for it. You fought when they were closing all the basins. Prescott came to the legislature and fought and said, you have to give us an option.
Yeah.
And that's why you kept that available.
Thank you.
And then lastly, something you don't read much about, but it's taking off, and that's watershed management or forest management. Now, you generally are going to do watershed management not to enhance water supply. But when you do watershed management, it does enhance water supply as a result. If you have thinning of trees, what you do maybe for forest management, there could be benefits to watershed management. And I've read several reports where they suggested that for Prescott. But it's very difficult for Prescott to do something on that scale by itself. It's a regional, state, or national kind of an endeavor. But we'll take a look at that also. And then we want to look finally at estimation of demands based on the general planned land use. So we're looking at enhancing beyond the city limits and beyond the current service area and beyond our committed area. And that's where that general plan comes in. And you know, I don't think we can look at the entire general plan as being built out in the next 50 years. That's not likely. But there could be areas that come in for annexation or, as you mentioned, spot areas that currently have customers who want to hook up that are not our current customers. So we'd look at that. We'd look at enhancing our water conservation programs. I think that's a key component. What could we do more? What could we do better? And what takes place naturally is real important too, because a lot of things on water conservation are passive. You can only buy a low flush toilet. So, but there's lots of programs throughout the country, and they're really taking off quite a bit nationally, because water used to be a Western kind of issue, and now it's a national issue, and an international issue for that matter. And we'd look at the rate structure, our loss reduction opportunities. Clearly, loss reduction would be a thing the city can do. What can the city government itself do as the water provider to lower water demand? And you don't have to depend on your customers. It's something you can do. And the rate structure and hookup fees are a key component of the current conservation programs. And I don't know that we'll be able to. It takes a lot of expertise to look at rates. It takes very specialized. Do they accomplish what you want to? But I think we
let me
can
interrupt
discuss
there. When you talk about rate structure, you're talking about our tiered
rate
structure so that the big users pay more, and the more you conserve, then the less you pay.
Correct. And that's the current structure.
Yeah.
But there's lots of different ways to do rate structures to encourage conservation. And again, it's pretty technical, and you don't want to make a big mistake. So I think as we look at it from the long-range plan, we'd look at it as an option to look at in more detail, I think. And then finally, the infrastructure, including the need for new wells, pipelines, booster pumps to meet additional demands beyond the current committed. If you're going to grow outside of where we think we're going to grow, we're going to have to supply water. It's not just a physical supply. You have to have a real supply. And you can't have a real supply without pipes and wells and things like that. And that requires expansion, and that costs money. We would have a look at unanticipated expansion of sewer and wastewater treatment plants, which is things are growing faster than we expected them to, or we're more efficient in capturing return flow. I think one of the goals of the city is to increase that rate of return flow. And that means probably we're going to fill up our treatment plants a little faster than what they've been built for. But we'd look at that as future costs of it. And then supplementary of new or replacement wells, optimizing location. And then at the end, when we're all done, the last phase, we'd look at, well, we've done all this study, and we looked at the future. We've looked at what if we don't make changes? What if we do make changes? What should we recommend? And that's all a study can ever do, is make a recommendation and give a plan, a roadmap maybe. And we'd look at enhanced monitoring, so we keep on top of what changes are going on. We'd look at updates to our models. That's key, is to keep them current. Updates to the groundwater models, so we're on top of what's changing in our aquifer. Are rates of decline slowing down? Are they increasing? What are the effects of other people's wells? Possible new or modified policies or ordinances that the city could propose. Adaptive management is a key component of long-range plans, which is you don't just lock yourself in. You take looks, periodic reviews, and say, well, that didn't work. Let's try something else. And so that's part of what we'll probably recommend. And then capital improvement programs are key. And while we won't do the capital improvement program, because other people just do that for the city, we'll point out where capital investments might be necessary. So, did you have a question?
I do. Your PowerPoint says there's 113 slides and looks like you're done at 26. So where are the others?
Leslie? Where are the others? So I'm
Yeah,
through.
see,
I'm
in-
through. Are you have any questions?
Just the only other thing, I didn't know if you were considering it because some of our neighbors are starting to play around with it, is the whole, and I hope we have to have these problems down the road, the major stormwater. And how will that, what's happening in other parts of the city and region and state, and how could that or should that play in as an option in future scenario planning? I know some people are super excited about it, and other people are like, I just read an article about Prescott Valley saying we can only get it in the dirt so far. We don't know if it goes all the way down. So is that something in your purview?
It is what we want to look at is stormwater an option as a supply and not just a nuisance to get rid of.
Okay.
And what we know is that some of the stormwater ends up in Watson Lake. That's not a new supply. Some of it infiltrates into the sewer system and goes through our effluent plant. That's not a new supply. So we would want to look at stormwater as, is it capturable and usable based on its quality, independent of what happens if it finds its way to one of our current supplies.
Mr. Gambogi, would you like to make some comments?
No, I'd just like an answer to my question.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I'd like to make a few comments since we're here to give some direction. Number one, we need to work on what the boundaries are going to be for the planning area. And we have to, by the way, that was an excellent presentation. Yeah. And we have to make sure that we do not outstrip our infrastructure with growth. We do not want to grow so fast that we outstrip our infrastructure, meaning our water supplies, because we just had to pass Prop 478 because our growth outstripped our public safety. We hadn't built a new fire station in 30 years. So we're playing catch up with that, and we certainly don't want to get caught playing catch up with our water management and water supplies, water infrastructure. The next thing I want to bring up is I'd like to see some sort of a definition of high water user in this plan, because with what I've seen been happening in Phoenix with the semiconductors, the data centers, they demand a lot of cooling. They use a lot of water. There's a lot of concern for them being located down there. Someday they may come up here. And I think we should have a definition of what a high water user is and maybe get that into our current water policy. And because if we get a high water user up here, it could certainly upset all of our models. Another thing, addressing forever chemicals. We need to have a plan for that and drill it. We have one well, our big producers shut down, and we're looking at, should we drill a new one? Should we just try to mitigate that with dilution, maybe filtration? So we're looking at those kind of things. And also, I'd like to see something in here about working with the state with being proactive and trying to get some legislation passed as far as getting our Big Chino in a basin management area, a rural groundwater management area, or some sort of an entity that is going to protect it, like our Prescott AMA. So those are just a few of my ideas. Any other comments from Lois?
I liked your idea about the definition of a large water user, because with our push and drive to work on economic development, another strategic plan, when we keep saying we want a low water users, but then when high water users come up, like what's the trade-offs again in your options analysis? If we really would have to get a huge economic benefit to replace one large water user, replacing 5 other businesses generating sales tax for us. So those are the kind of thoughts as I look at all the different strategies. And then are you about to get into this section?
Very quickly, because we're running over our time. quite a
Okay.
bit. Yeah.
Well, I think strategic planning, this is something we've been talking about for a long time, so I'm super excited to see it here and beginning. I'm super excited to hear the worm is updated. I'm going to have lots of questions about what's it telling you right now, where we're at. So if we could plan that for a future discussion. And then my only other thought on this was, I see the work going out to December 26th. And what would have to be true to move it up even 6 months? You know what I mean? So as I know, people are coming forward with budget requests and those kind of things. So we've been wanting this for a long time. So could we accelerate, and what would it take?
Yeah, and I just like to comment on economic development. The main things they look at is reliable power and a reliable water source. So if we're going to grow responsibly and promote our economic development, we need to be sure that those things are available. Thank you. Okay, Leslie.
Okay, quickly. First, I just have 4 items here. So I wanted to first address Councilman Gambogi's question. So our slides were 12 total. And I know you've had a request in the past to have them numbered, and it looks like they weren't numbered. So I do apologize for that. I think you're seeing the number on the packet. I'm not sure why that number looks so high, but we were only 12 slides today. And we can ask that when we have slides built again to make sure we have numbers on them. So the last remaining items then did have to do with Councilwoman Fruworth, the first kind of outreach piece that you had in your packet that we built, and we were looking for any comments that you had before we finalized it and made it available in different formats. So we'll take those at any time. You can send them to Brian or me directly, or
I'm sorry, what do you mean by outreach?
this packet or this information sheet that you pointed out that's on your packet. That one will have available on websites, other venues, share it with people. It's outreach.
Well, I do think the second page where the water service and the planning area, again, we haven't approved the boundary for the general plan. So, maybe some kind of caveat.
Draft,
General plan not approved, la, 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 la. So I think that would be good. And I had no other notes that you haven't answered in the presentation, so thank you.
Okay, great. Well, the important key piece that Herb has already mentioned is the team. This is not just a 2-person project. We're reaching out with feelers and getting different pieces from people, but similar to our decision in order of assured water supply, when I ran that project, we needed to pull teams together and have sit-down meetings and have some detailed discussions. So we haven't really hit that part of this project yet, but it's coming. We've had some great work with Public Works Utilities in providing information that we needed on the legal aspects of what they make sure they are performing to, so we can have that in the plan as well. The timeline on the back sheet of this handout that we're making for public consumption shortly. It's just important to see this is not new. The city has had to plan water supplies since day one. You've had some very heavy reports that have come out in the past about which direction you might need to go and the costs associated with it. The last item is, this is involved with a USBR, United States Bureau of Reclamation grant. Our first performance report is due at the end of this month. We have it geared up, ready to go. Probably will distribute or turn it in at the end of next week. So that's just one more general piece for this project, and that's all I have.
One other thought as I'm looking at this, because if this is out there for public consumption, what might be helpful in the project description is what's the decision maker? How will we make decisions along the way? Is this council? Is this staff? Is this stakeholders? Like who gets to own the process? Who gets to inform and who gets to evaluate and decide? So just being clear with the public on what that means. So, and when their participation might be, what windows will public participation be?
Yeah,
or
let me
stakeholder
strengthen that a
pieces?
little bit. We do have a piece of where the public would be involved more heavily. We need to make sure we have products that they can actually comment on before we go too far. But we're basically starting now this overview. Once we have it cleaned up, it's going to be, and we'll, of course, it'll be on website. It'll probably be on Participate Prescott. It'll have different venues. But I think what you're asking too is let us know when these outreach pieces are happening so that it's not like, oh, we didn't know we were
Yeah,
doing
I
that.
had
So-
just noticed in January through December it says stakeholder workshops and reviews, but it never said before then in that proposed milestone, public input or
Yeah, we've jumped it ahead a little bit
so.
for various reasons.
But I just want, if this is going to be available to the public, I want them to see that they can participate, that it's in the milestones.
Yeah, I think we'll be hitting it with Facebook and some other things.
Good.
Yeah.
Make a mention, I think that we should, in our planning, we should mention something about the Upper Verde River, protecting the flow of the Upper Verde River. That's kind of our general goal, guideline. Legally, we have to do that. And also, under your planning elements, I don't see recharge mentioned. Shouldn't that be part of our planning as a good goal to prevent the overdraft, even though it's maybe not be attainable?
Yeah, this is just 4 pages and we packed it as much as we could.
All right.
Be aware that I didn't envision this as a one-stop. That's it on this project. It's going to be a series, so it's built on a template and there'll be additional information. So,
Alrighty.
and they'll link, so it makes sense. But I think your recharge piece, we were trying to grab that within the supply and quality review.
Alrighty.
But yeah, anything that hits you, later this week, just send it over by email, and we'll, as I said, we're going to make final adjustments on this very soon. So
Okay.
thank you for your time today.
righty.
Unless you have any more questions.
Nope. Thank you. Love it. Very exciting.
Next item, presentation and discussion regarding proposed updates to City Code 3-10-8 incentive program.
Let's see. Hi. I guess the presentation will be loaded shortly.
Oh, good morning.
Good morning. I'm very happy to be here. Tracy Beasley, Water Resource Project Manager. And I am here to talk about our 3-10-8 incentive program code. So let's see if we can get the presentation up. Give them just a second here. There we go. Perfect. Okay. So on the first slide, I have a list of a variety of goals as the reason for coming today. But I wanted to summarize what the intent is for looking at the code. As I came into this job in the fall, I really wanted to see what we were doing compared to many other communities in the Southwest and the West, particularly other places with drought considerations that have to be taken into account, and also coming at it with the lens of an educator, wanting to excite the community, wanting to be clear with them to make things easy. We're a small team with big goals, and so how can we be efficient in the work that we're doing with our community, and what can we do to be as effective as possible, both in water conservation and in looking at how we marry our work with general plans, with other codes, with the values of the city, and with getting the most that we can with the money we're able to invest in this program to have positive outcomes for the city. So those are the drivers for looking at this. While there are a number of slides, and I didn't know about the numbering, I will know in the future. I will number all my slides. A lot of it is clarity, bringing clarity so that when we are adding updates to our website, when we are refining our rebate programs, when we're having phone conversations, our customers understand what it is that we're offering them and what it is that we're requesting of them. We have a very solid program, but sometimes those intentions are left to be
Excuse me,
assumed.
Mr. Gambogi has a question.
Yes, sir.
I don't know if it's appropriate to ask the question at this slide or not, but in terms of, these are code recommendations.
Yes, sir.
Two things. One, we've got these new meters, like I have a new meter, and I think it's pretty good. I can see what I used yesterday versus what I used today. The challenge to me is, I don't know if I'm doing better or doing worse. CWAG's number one priority this year, if I remember correctly, is residential conservation. So although we don't have widespread application of those meters, we might consider coming up with some benchmarks so the people that do have the meters could know what's good, what's bad. And secondly, as you talked about benchmarking other communities, I think we have a really amazing rebate program. I really wonder how many people know about it. You know, I told the story many times where I'm driving up Senator Highway and I go bug-eyed because there's a truck in front of me with a load that I haven't seen in 12 years. And that was a load of sod because they were putting sod down in their yard. I'm guessing there's somebody that moved here and said, my rock doesn't work here, I got to have sod. As I've walked the community, I see a lot of yards with grass fronts. And I think we would be well served if we had a more robust communication or education program among the residents, because I think if you're a newbie coming in here and you're coming in from a place where you had grass, you're inclined to say, well, I got to have grass. I had that experience when I first moved to Albuquerque, back when the earth cooled.
Excuse me, we're
didn't
kind of
change
getting
the
off
rock
topic,
yard.
and our time is limited here. Mr. Gambogi, could
What's
you
that?
We're getting off topic. Our time is limited. Could you make your point so we could move on? Thank you.
After all the interruptions you made of Herb, you're going to question my question? So I think education is really important. And I don't know, I don't know if it fits in here, but I just wanted to make that comment because I think people need to know.
Thank you. I appreciate that very much. And I'll make a brief response to that. First off, you're hitting a lot of points that I've been thinking of. So I appreciate hearing that echoed from the subcommittee. Sort of all in reference to the presentation we saw early, you might see what I'm bringing forward here as the pre-step to increasing the program. So as we have more clarity on what we have, perhaps making a few new offerings, we come out with clear education materials, and then we create the space to go out and work with landscapers, work with YCCA, going out to the box stores. So this is the groundwork to really creating an expansion. And as you mentioned, the Eye on Water app, number one, stop in the library after today, you're gonna see it highlighted all month. And number two, this sort of plays into that as well. These are early steps so that we have clear direction when we get those requests, when we get the information out, so that I can have a clearer path to making these suggestions to our customers. And I've done some of the preliminary work too, like looking at really how much water does a residential person use in a year versus the whole city, so that we have those baselines for those conversations. So absolutely, thank you. Okay, so just to move forward and keep this moving, what I was saying is you'll see a lot of slides, but a lot of what is in here is request for clarifications or some corrections. So we really only have two big proposals for changes. The first one that I'm suggesting is an addition of a timeline. What I've found since being here is if there aren't guidelines, everything goes. It doesn't matter what part of the program we're talking about. But timelines, we have customers. I had a customer submit an application from almost 5 years ago for something that was done back in that time. We regularly have applications for 1.5 to 2 years in the past. And that can be a challenge administratively. For every 1 to 2 years, we have changes in our code. There can be changes in prices, changes in qualifications. So staff have to go back and reanalyze old code in order to determine what makes sense to offer a customer currently. The intention is also to really use current monies to honor work that's being done in the generally present time frame. When it comes to turf conditions can change, and we'll address that a little bit later in the presentation. In looking across other municipalities, 1 year timeline is pretty much the gold star. Some of them use a fiscal year. I don't get the sense that that is a necessity for us. I feel like a general rolling 1 year gives the customer plenty of time to make a purchase, even if there are some minor hiccups, and move forward to implementing the plan, whether it's a toilet or some other opportunity within the rebate program. Many places actually have shorter ones. Flagstaff has some shorter timelines, for example. We are looking at potentially suggesting a 120 days, a 6 months for the turf. And again, I'll get to that in a few minutes. But having the timeline is going to help us fairly administer this program to people who are doing the work today.
Tracy, when you talk about timeline, are you talking about a year from the purchase of the toilet?
Yes.
Okay, not
Yes.
a calendar year.
Not a calendar
Okay,
year.
from the year of
Nope,
purchase.
from the date on the
Date of
receipt
purchase.
of whatever activity it is that they're looking to do. That's the simplest version of a 1 year timeline.
So my thoughts was I love the rolling 1 year as the gold star. My concern is until we get to beefing up the customer education, we're still going to be in a catch-up mode. So I don't know whether that we put that right in effective or we let people know we're getting
Right.
there, and this will be when we begin that. And then your information right here says standard municipal practice 1 year annual or fiscal, and I didn't see that it said rolling. So is that
Well, I have the suggested code. Let's see, we can flip to that
in
part
the
on
red
the screen.
line down at the bottom?
Yes,
I gotcha.
yes,
Okay.
yes, ma'am. So it doesn't. It just says 1 year after the purchase of the eligible product.
I think
simplify.
then maybe similar to what we had to do with the impact fees, that we need a grace period, 1 year grace period, so that for this year while you're doing the education and all those other things, we don't penalize people who just found out and they did it, 6 months ago.
Well, then what I would say is to look at what makes sense and what can be administratively managed with a customer. The initial idea was to move July 1 with the new fiscal year. But if you would like to have a little bit longer time with that on the time frame of whether it's all of the recommendations or one of the recommendations, we can certainly consider that.
That's my input until I see what your education plan is
Okay.
that we have a grace period. I don't know how long, but your education, you were talking about more Facebook, more
Right.
public library, more farmers market, et cetera, et cetera. The more we can do and get that up and running,
Right.
then we work our way to the grace period's done. So that's
Okay.
all I'm looking for is a period of startup.
So you were talking about fiscal 27 then? Is that
hard
what we're
start
talking?
or something like that. So I'm just throwing it out as
Okay.
a suggestion, but we've been with other learnings
Sure. Mm-hmm.
lately. If we do hard starts and people think we haven't given them enough time in education, then we get all sorts of complaints. But nobody complains when we put a grace period in.
Okay.
Yeah.
So would the suggestion be to take a proposed grace period when this goes to council?
I think that would be good because we
Okay.
want to get as many people to participate as possible. And I'd hate to go, put in a new toilet and then go in and then find out, oh, you missed
Sure.
it by a week
Yeah.
or something.
Well,
Yeah, something like that.
we're gentle. When we
Oh,
miss it by
okay.
4 years, that's the one that.
Okay. All righty.
So I'm not going to say no to someone who's missing something by a week. Absolutely not.
All righty. Thank you.
Okay. All right. The next one is looking at our incentive totals. The current opportunity allows a lifetime of up to $2,500 that can be used for any of the incentives that we offer. In most cases, that seems to be very reasonable for a residential community. But when we look to our commercial community, we really have an untapped opportunity. We have very, very few commercial applicants, but I'll give you 2 examples of how an increase could support our water efforts in a very, very measurable way. One is commercial toilets. So if you think about going into a box store or a restaurant, they say the average resident flushes a toilet about 5 times a day. Think about each toilet being flushed 5 or more times an hour. So the volume of water saved can be very significant, but they're not swapping 1 or 2 toilets. They might be swapping 8 toilets. They might be working on sink fixtures at the same time. And what if they wanted to do turf as well? So, I'm looking at a commercial that might want to do both, or if you're looking at an HOA, the $2,500, if you do the math, is actually for a square foot area less than 1/16 of an acre. So that's very small when you're thinking about HOAs or golf courses or other large lands that still have turf on them. So if we were to give a small bump to that for the commercial side, then we would be creating more space to really reduce at a very visible way. What we found is many of the larger communities, I don't know where they're finding the dollars, but up to $100,000 a year for commercial. Some communities have no limits. Some adjust, up to this many square feet, you get X dollars, and then they reduce it. So there's a whole variety of solutions. We're a smaller community. We've made some exceptions in the past where we've bumped that line up to about $5,000. And so the proposal would be, for consideration, would be to have an incentive for the commercial, multifamily, or HOA up to $5,000.
I think that's a great idea, including the commercial.
Beautiful. Thank you. Okay. Now we're going to move into turf. As I said in my introduction, a lot of this is about clarity. And while we have some specific wording in the code around what we would like our customers to do, it's been very open to interpretation. So we're going to have a much expanded website with tools, resources, guidance on all of our rebates. And this is helping us get clarity as staff to figure out the way forward and how we want to present that. So I'll try to roll through these quickly so that you have time to ask questions. First proposal is to shift the language from removal to replacement, just opening the mind a little bit about the variety of possibilities that are there, and adding some wordage to help clarify. We're looking for truly irrigated lands, not areas that have been sitting for 2 or 3 years that are in very poor condition that likely have not had water on them. And so, we'll always make an educated professional call when we have situations, but this is for the bigger picture. If someone has some small bald spots in a large area, we're not worried about that. But just clarifying, the wordage, drought tolerant. People see that in marketing. We want those words there. So this better supports the water smart options that we're looking for. And again, will help us with the program implementation. Adding clarifying language around the controllers. This is actually very, very simple. Old school was automatic timers. Automatic timers are different from controllers. EPA water sense labeled smart controllers, if you're shopping, is what you're looking for. If you're going to the EPA website, that's what you're looking for. So we're leaving the word timer in there because it's just local language. People, are familiar with that term, but it's a part of the education process to help them know what to look for. And then the second piece is just an additional detail and clarification. We already say, you already have some language around having to have a replacement irrigation system if you are doing low water use plantings. But just again, spray irrigation is not what we're looking for. We're looking for water efficient type systems. This is what I would say is one of the first new details. We have implemented 90% artificial turf since I've been here. That's what comes through the door, even though our wording says low water use plantings and uses the word xeriscaping, which even within our own materials references low water use plants. And so we want to take an educational path to helping people better learn options and water-friendly and smart living-friendly styles of changing from turf to something else. And so the first step is a little bit of education on whatever you choose. We're looking to have any water that falls be able to get into the ground rather than causing a runoff issue. And so that's where this language is here. Permeable surface is encouraged. A maximum of 25% of the converted area that is hardscaped will qualify. You can do whatever you like in your backyard, but when we're offering that carrot, the intention is to focus on not causing other challenges within the neighborhoods. So that's what this one is. And that permeable language will show up on our
Lois?
website and in materials.
Lois has a comment.
Yeah,
Yes.
I have a question.
Sure.
So if somebody has a lawn
Yes, ma'am.
and now they want to put a couple of little drought-tolerant beds and a whole lot of rock in between all of that, we're only going to help them with 25% of the converted area cost?
No.
Okay, then I'm not interpreting what you're
That's okay.
saying.
No, I
Right.
appreciate the question very much. What comes through currently mostly is artificial turf or maybe pea gravel. I haven't seen any applications with plant material that have been turf related in the last 6 months. And so, no, if someone comes in and they want to put artificial turf, if they want to put sidewalks, patio pavers, those sorts of things, what we're saying is, let's say you had 600 square feet of turf that you took out, and you put 500 square feet of patio pavers and cement we would only cover with rebate 25% of that hard concrete surface. Now, what we're trying to get people to do is to switch to pavers, plantings, things that allow, even if the artificial turf is being done, you can choose options that allow the infiltration. So, does that help?
I'm sorry. I think you're going to have to be careful on how you word this in the policy.
Okay.
Because I would sit here and say, if people did 500 square feet of stones, rocks, spread around, which is what I see all over this town, they removed a lawn, they put down rocks and a couple of planters. I don't know why we're
That's
limiting it to
permeable. That's
25%. So that's 100%.
That's 100%.
And I just don't know that people, when they put a paver walk through that to their house, you know. So just giving people some examples on, because 25% just strikes, that was when I did the pre-reading, I was like, why wouldn't we give them more? You know,
Yes,
take out more lawn.
Yes. No, 100. We want the plants. The pea gravel is fantastic. As the policy has been implemented, artificial turf is still an acceptable option, but we're asking people to design it in a way that the water is getting through to the soil.
Okay, because that's what the maximum of 25% of converted area that is hardscaped will qualify. And if somebody took out a lawn and put in a lot of different stuff that's permeable, I would say, why don't we do 100% that's hardscaped?
Yeah, well,
Hardscape is cement.
yeah,
No,
non-permeable.
that's not how people all around here refer to
Okay.
hardscaping. So this is why
Okay.
the example hardscape would be considered all the stones, all the pavers.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Okay.
So yeah, if we could work on.
I thought that was
phrasing of
simpler
this.
than non-permeable, but yes, we'll work on that.
Thank you.
Yeah, because
Absolutely.
what we're trying to prevent is just a massive concrete island that the stormwater is going to shoot off and flood the neighbor's house.
Yes. Yes. And so, yeah, we had, I think we've hit the points that are on the next slide. All the things that you're suggesting help with the positives. You know, we get the infiltration, we get the cooling effect, we get all of those things. Now, to also support that, what we're looking to add is a pre-application for turf specifically. All municipalities that we've reviewed have varying versions of this. The intention, again, is to be clear, to understand what the customer wants to do ahead of time so that we're not getting applications at the end. And, you know, it's sort of like, well, how do we go about implementing this? It's to provide education opportunities. Someone I spoke with last week came into 2 weeks ago, came into the office. She's actually decided to change to doing pea gravel and some grasses. And some of that may have come out of the education conversations that we had. And to be efficient, we're a small team. Actually having a very basic pre-application for turf will help the process move more smoothly and reduce the potential need for on-site visits. So that's the goal with this as well. So here we've got the red line in front of you for that. Let me get to the right page here. And we leave it very general so that we have a little bit of flexibility in how that's implemented. We're just looking for the overall support for that. So the applicant must contact Conservation Office for pre-application guidelines prior to removal of turf and receive a notification of approval to proceed. And then, you know, additional details will be in rebates and on our website.
So allow me to break in here. So I guess artificial turf is falling out of favor for xeriscaping because of the chemicals in the plastics, PFOS. Is that what I'm
Yes.
saying? We're trying to, it breaks down and it's just,
Yes,
Better to go with-
nationally, you know, we looked all across the Southwest. I even saw a few in the in the Midwest. I could not find any community that gave rebate dollars for artificial turf.
Okay.
So we're not proposing a hard left turn right now we're proposing a path to increasing our education.
Yeah. And speaking of education, are we going to be working, because a lot of people use professional landscapers who do a very nice job breaking up the concrete islands. Are we going to be working with them, educating them?
100%, yes. We definitely want to work through the YCCA and do some outreach.
Alrighty, thank you.
Then we have some very, very simple corrections and clarifications. There was an error in the rainwater barrel, so we've got a suggestion for improvement there. The others are at the end, I'm sorry. The last large one would be adding in language related to commercial toilets. Commercial folks can submit applications for what we have currently, but this draws attention with language to, hey, we want you to come forward. And they come to the PAC meetings and the other places where they're seeing language about what's available. This will be highlighted. And the bigger piece of it actually is that, I don't know if you've noticed, but at least in the last 5 years, I don't think I've been in a public large space where there have been manual toilets. They're all automated. And the pandemic may have, been a factor in that. But as we all know, those toilets also tend to turn themselves on. So it's not just when a customer is using the toilet, there is also extra flushing that goes on with those toilets. So I did some very basic math, and the amount of water that could be saved if we have commercial businesses applying for our rebates will be 2 to 3 times the volume easily for the large commercial to what a residential toilet would be. But the cost to the automated is higher. And so what I've proposed is that we offer 200 to 200, and I believe 225 for the commercial automated toilets so that we better match and make it worth the while for the customer to apply. I have not seen, I think I've seen 2 commercial applications in the last 6 months. And so this would be a huge win from a volume if we're able to attract our commercial, and the volume of water that would be saved for an extra $100 to $125, if that's enough to catch their attention, will be very noticeable at the end of the year.
Now, when you say commercial, what about like apartments? Are those considered commercial? They're residential, but multifamily is somewhat commercial.
Sure.
If they retrofit.
100%. They are all, those all typically use what I'm going to call a household toilet. Doctors' offices, small businesses all typically use the household toilet. And so those would fall within the category that we have. There are many available under the $300 mark that meet code requirements. The flushometer automated toilets are the ones that this is addressing. And those, based on my research, start at around $300 and can, trend in the $400 and $500 price point for those toilets.
Let me ask you this. Do you go around to like Lowe's, Home Depot, and the plumbing supply companies and make sure that these things are readily available?
It's on the list. I have visited a few of the stores just to see what the signage looks like. There's room for growth. Had a wonderful conversation with 3 Lowe's employees this week on irrigation, actually.
Okay.
So yes, that's on the list. Very high.
Okay, thanks.
Can I say that?
Lois?
Yeah, I actually, when I first joined a year ago, the Prescott Downtown Partnership, I brought the conservation program and I talked about urinals and all those things with everybody. And I'm sorry, nobody jumped on the program. But I do think if we do a good job with education and getting through the Chamber of Commerce and others, if they can put it in their newsletter once a month, I do think if with the higher number, we might get some bites. So I'm supportive of your proposal to go up on the commercial because I think we could save a lot of water.
Thank you. And I also realized we weren't acknowledging the waterless urinals. So I put that in there too, zero water.
Saw that.
I had no idea.
I had to ask my husband how those worked. He thought they worked pretty well.
I did read up a little bit on them. The trend seems to be positive. Okay, and then the last, again, is just a little clarification. There are a couple of different ways to determine what a washer qualifies for, how, whether that's something that we would give a rebate. We have the CEE guidelines on our website, which is a very messy, not alphabetically organized list that's updated monthly. That's what's on the left side here, which it's very, we have the ability to turn it into an Excel spreadsheet and make it more manageable, but your average customer doesn't. So can we use Energy Star? That was the question. 90% of the time, yes, but it's not 100% because they award money or they award certification for some unique washers that are for, studio apartments, putting in bathtubs and things like that. So I have added the link to these things on our website to help our customers, but by providing that number that's on the 3.2 or lower, when you go shopping on the EPA website, it looks very similar to a box store webpage. Right up front, you can see that number. So very easy to pick the size, the brand, all of those things and say, oh, 3.2. It's going to work out for me. So that's what this particular one is for. And that would be the end. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Tracy. Good work. And that was very comprehensive. And thank you for taking this job on. Mr. Camboji, do you have any thoughts?
I have no thoughts.
Okay, how about questions?
No.
Okay, and Councilwoman Fruworth?
My only concern is, are we, with all your energy and education and everything you're going to bring to this, are we budgeted enough if you blow the budget with people coming in the
Sure.
next year?
Sure.
So what's your thoughts there?
Well, I think at this point for this fiscal year, we're just a little bit under. So we have the 60,000. My projections are to meet or be just under that for this fiscal year. And for the FY26, we'll probably be right around that ceiling. Then as we move into the following year, especially if we're going to do, the toilets, we wouldn't have a timeline. We'd probably implement July 1st for those. But we've also had assurances from Public Works that if we have customers coming to us, they want to expand the net.
All right, well, I'd like to make a motion. I move to forward proposed updates to City Code 3-10-8 Incentive Program to Council for approval.
Second.
Please vote.
Just a moment, please. Passes 3-0.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Tracy. Next item?
Item C, presentation, discussion, and possible action regarding potential updates to water service applications and water management policy regarding hazardous materials.
Brian, what pages are we on?
This would be, it was shown as item 3C on the agenda.
Page 27?
Yep.
Yeah. These things get confusing because they're printed out back to back, front and back and yeah, you
I
have to
see.
flip it over.
Well, good morning, Water Issues Subcommittee. Brian Reese, Water Resources Environmental Services Manager. So a while back, the Water Issues Subcommittee asked staff to look into hazardous materials and how we could update our water service agreement application to address hazardous materials, and how we could also update our water policy. on that discussion too. So we've had a couple of meetings on this, as you know. We've been moving forward and progressing with your feedback. So this is just a continuation of that progression as we move forward. So as a reminder, what my thought process on this is that we have two really good programs in the city. We have a pre-treatment program for mostly for indoor use, which tries to capture all of the pre-treatment requirements by industrial users that are necessary to capture the contaminants before it goes into our wastewater treatment facilities and our sewer lines. And we have a stormwater permitting program, SM4 program, separate municipal storm and sewer systems. Sorry, but that is for rainwater. And provides that they have to go through a permitting process to ensure that they have captured what we call the first flush. It's around the first, I believe, half inch of rainwater that that comes down onto the site in the impermeable areas, mostly parking lots, anywhere there's going to be contaminants. Route that water to water treatment facility structures so that they can remove the contaminants before that water continues on into the storm system.
Yeah,
and
I'm
into the
thinking
creeks.
gas stations.
Yes, exactly. Gas stations, basically all of our commercial application that's over 1 acre in size has to follow that program. So with that, in your packet, I came up with this language here, and for the new water service application, we provided the check boxes for the uses that correspond with our pre-treatment program that they are looking for and have identified as the most important ones to look at for potential contamination. We added the other box in as suggested in the last meeting so that the applicant can fill in kind of what their use is best, how it's best stated. We added some language into here on what type of hazard materials may be introduced into our systems from this particular development, this proposed development, so that subcommittee, council can understand what that project might entail, and also help staff understand that if we have a project coming in that might have potential need for pretreatment, we can reach out to the water quality specialist just to make sure it's on his radar, and also to the environmental services manager for the MS4 program. And then lastly, we put the kind of the note down there and to indicate to the applicant that these programs exist and that you will be required to comply with those programs, and any costs associated with complying with those programs would be bared by the applicant. So that was how we tried to address that. So this was just a blow up. I should have been on here. It's a little bit easier to read as we were moving through here. And then the second part of this is that we added some language to the water policy to try to provide that same language and be consistent with the WSA application. So for the Section 3C wastewater treatment, we added this language here that talks about the pre-treatment program, what its goals are, and how it's implemented. And then added a new section, 3.4, to discuss the MS4 program on the stormwater side and what the benefits of that program is and what their goals are. So with that, I could take any questions. What I would be looking at doing is if you're agreeable to this type of language and these type of changes, the WSA application we would just move forward with. There's no need for council voting on that. We would implement it and swap it out into our system to provide for the customers. On the water policy end of it, what I would do is I would take a resolution to council to make these changes to the water policy, and if our next available for that will probably be May 13th meeting if we decide to move forward in that direction at this meeting. So with that, any questions that you might have, and can move forward.
Well, thank you very much for all the hard work that went into this, you and the rest of the city staff. I think this is something that we have needed to do for a long time, because when you have a new facility come into town, a new business, and they apply for water, I think the water service application should be the thing that kind of gives them a heads up that if they are going to discharge hazardous materials, they need to be responsible for the costs, and not the city taxpayers at our wastewater treatment plant, which how it currently exists. And we're incurring extra costs at taxpayers' expense because this wasn't clear to prior facilities. So I think it's important that we have this here, and it's very clear, and then we also dovetail it with our water policy. So any comments,
I have
Councilwoman?
one comment or question, I don't know what it is, on the next slide.
Oh, yes.
So in the second end of the second line in red, so that you're basically saying the application includes all of this information, and then you begin with city council members can use this information to understand if any pretreatment conditions are required, blah, blah, blah. And I've never seen a WSA application. As we're talking about development, we've never seen them in the past. And so I don't know if we need to, before you say city council members can use this information, you put something like after evaluation by city staff, or after evaluation, city staff shall advise and brief council members. Because,
Yeah, we could.
because you're the ones that look at the applications and decide whether you're just going to approve them, staff admin, or whether you need to come to city council. So it seems like we're going to start getting WSA applications. If I was someone in the public, I'd think they're going to go right to city council, and that's just not the case.
The applications are included now in our agendas, on the Water Issue Subcommittee agenda. It's something we just started doing.
Oh, I haven't seen one. So it just started
yes.
today?
No, we just started maybe a couple meetings ago. We've made it now standard to put the WSA application in the memos for the water service applications coming to this group. And you're right, it just started not too long ago.
Oh, we had the senior apartment one that was included in there. Okay.
We're gonna start regularly including those because that
Good.
makes sense. To your point a little bit, there are a number of WSA applications you might not see because they go through the administrative process of the water policy versus that. So maybe I can touch that language up to be a little clearer.
Okay, thank you.
And I know legal's not here today, but I was going to suggest that legal partner with this, and if they have any contracts or development agreements with new facilities that might have a discharge, that they include some boilerplate language addressing hazardous materials and who's responsible for treating the discharge before it leaves the premises. Just to make it perfectly clear in case there's a question that ends up in court.
Okay, definitely. I can get with them. And just to let you know, they've reviewed all of this material to this point, so we'll
Thank
just
you.
keep
I
that
could
review
tell.
going.
Yeah. Thank you. They did a wonderful job, and this is something that I'm very pleased with. Councilman Gambogi, do you have anything to contribute?
No.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to make a motion. I move to approve changes to the water service application and forward resolution number 2025-1923 to council. As amended to council for approval.
I second.
Passes 3-0. Next item is D, presentation discussion regarding proposed water legislation impacting the city of Prescott and surrounding areas.
Okay, so, and I know we've had a really heavy agenda today. Meeting's gone fairly long. So if you don't mind, I'm going to be brief on this. And you all know that you can email me for any questions that you have specifically on any bills or anything you have going on in the state legislature. So, you know, we followed up, we had a meeting before, and this is kind of a follow-up meeting on the bills that NAMWA has been tracking. At this point, I believe the 28th was the last day that committee could consider a bill. Today is also a last day, and I'm not sure if that was an appropriations deal. I'm still we're all on a learning curve. Well, I'm in a learning curve on this as we go along a bit, but we're getting to the end of the process at this point in time. So I wanted to follow up with some of the bills that we talked about earlier. And kind of something that I'm learning about this is that, you know, NAMWA, we look at these bills and we find ones that we think are relevant to our association, relevant to Northern Arizona and our water needs. And we try to track those. But this is a perfect example of if you're tracking bills that are not going to move anywhere in committee anyway, it's kind of a waste of time. So another very valuable resource, though, that I found and that's I've been in contact with for the last week and a half was our new legislative partner, State 48, and they've been able to provide some good information on the legislative process. So coming up next year, I think that's going to be a tool that we're going to rely on more and more. So I wanted to brief on the Big Chino Subbasin Verde River bill by Representative Gwen. I think Councilperson Fruwerf, you pointed out that it was put on hold on February 20th in the last meeting, and you were right. It was put on hold on February 20th. Representative Gwen had a meeting with us and PV, and it was a very good meeting where it was decided that the bill would be kind of put on hold for the rest of this legislative session, and we'll have conversations on new legislation that we may want to introduce in future legislative stations with him and keep him in the know of what we need here at the city of Prescott, and Prescott Valley was going to do the same. So the stormwater infrastructure bills that we were following have not moved through any of the committees, and it was basically dead at this point. Basically, all of the bills that we were following at this point had no action coming in. So I just wanted to make that general statement. They're not going anywhere with this legislative session.
I'd like to just make a comment.
Yeah.
There's one chair of a committee who gets all the water legislation, and it never, ever leaves that committee. And the governor's been trying to pass some groundwater legislation, but hasn't gone anywhere.
Yeah, it's kind of the way it's working this year. I agree. So, the rural groundwater management areas was kind of the governor's water policy committee's bill, and it did not move through committee at this point in time. So, just to have some information new or what might be moving through, I put some of the bills that are moving through committee at this point. So SB 1520 is the rural groundwater. It's basically a counter bill to the governor's bill, and it's moved through. It's passed the Senate at this point in time. It hasn't. I don't think it's received action and I put this together a couple weeks ago. So this, I do believe, has already moved through the House's Natural Resources, Energy, and Water Commission, and is probably going to move through the House. It's probably going to be approved, and then it'll be up to the governor to see if she wants to put it into law or to veto it. Supply and demand assessment, groundwater, is also moving through. It has passed through the House and is now at the Natural Resources Committee. This bill, 2271, bear with me here. Do not have them all exactly memorized, but this bill was introduced to require that ADWR provide a list of information on their supply and demand studies that they do on a 5-year basis for all of the subbasins in the state. Some of those things, I looked at that list, adding static water levels to the report, depth to bedrock, number of index wells per section, and general groundwater volumes and rates, and also stormwater volumes and rates, I think is, so I've reviewed their supply and demand analysis that ADWR just completed that report for the Little Chino subbasin recently. It had a lot of this information already in it, so I guess this bill is just trying to expand it somewhat. And it seems like it's moving through. So just keeping on going here, HB 2274 was the Water Improvement District for Wilcox Basin, trying to introduce an alternative to the AMA that was put on that basin earlier, is moving through at this point. And SB 1448 was the Farm Irrigation Efficiency Fund. I put this one on here because I wanted to show one that had almost unanimous passing through its committee. It was and it was 28 to 1 or 28 to 1 going through. And then this morning I checked and it was a striker bill. So that entire language has been removed, and it's now about dental dentists and dental hygienists' ability to compact with others. So that was kind of, yeah. What I did hear though is that this bill is a line item for the state budget. So even though it may not, it's probably not going to be a bill anymore, that $10 million funding for conservation farming efforts will probably be added into the budget through the budgetary process. There is the stormwater bill that we'll track. SB 1236 looks like it's moving through. I don't know if the governor will veto it or not. It was somewhat on partisan lines as it was coming through, so we'll track that one and see where it goes. SB 1558, a water technology study committee. Looks like it's moving through too. NAMWA, was generally opposed to it just for due to the fact that maybe a subcommittee isn't really the best way to evaluate new technologies for water. So, but we'll see where that bill goes. And a water use prohibition landscaping, SB 1523. Has passed the Senate at this point. I took a look at the bill this morning before coming to the meeting. It passed through the House's Natural Resource Committee 10-0, which I thought was interesting. And so I looked at it, and the House has really marked this bill up. It's and took out a lot of measures on some of the proposed landscaping restrictions. So I think they've got it to where maybe it's a little bit more partisan at this point, and maybe it'll go through. And with that, if you have any questions on bills, I'd be happy to answer if I can.
No, very good. Thank you. And we'll just keep hoping that we get some statewide legislation while we're having our drought. And, anyone else have any comments?
No, I think the whole city, we're all learning in different ways of how to work with our legislature. So we're just going to get better. It's only up from here.
Yeah.
That's good.
Okay. All righty. Thank you.
Item E, presentation and discussion regarding the amended 2022 water management policy discussion, current residential and non-residential water budget overview for January 1st, 2025 through March 20th, 2025.
Okay, so last item on our agenda today, just a briefing and a progress on the water budgets set for this period. So as you know, we set water budgets for semi-annual. For this period starting on January 1st through June 30th, 2025, the water budget for residential was set at 25 and the water budget for non-residential was set for 25. So the first slide up on the screen here shows our residential water budget. It shows the two projects that were approved administratively in the period. What it does not show here is the project Bradshaw Senior Living Apartments, which was taken to council and approved on 3/25 on March 25th of this year. So this material had to be ready a couple weeks in advance. So that meeting hadn't happened at that point in time. Shown that the remaining budget of 2466, if you account for the 5.6 acre feet of water approved through the Senior Living Center, the remaining budget in the residential is now 19.06 acre feet. And our next slide shows the non-residential. We've only had one project through this period, and that was the Embry-Riddle Student Union Facility for 11.33 acre feet. And the total water remaining at this time in the budget is 13.67 acre feet. And then the last table here shows projects approved through existing contracts. So this water is not removed from any of the budgets in the budgeting period. So it's just kind of provided to let you know what water is moving through the period under existing contracts. So at this point, you can see that all of the projects were single-family residential houses, except for one self-storage facility with a very minimal water use. So the total up to this point was 2.34 acre feet that's been allocated out through existing contracts. That's where we are in the budget process at this point in time. If you have any questions.
Nope, pretty straightforward. Okay. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, next item. Any announcements?
The only announcement that I have for you today is that we just submitted yesterday the ADWR annual report, and this is where we report all of our water usage and all of our water information for the year to ADWR to show what the groundwater usage was for the year. So that was submitted on March 31st. In accordance to the deadline. At the next WIS meeting, plan to have a focus topic covering that report and discussing all the aspects of the water usage and everything that was reported for the year for your information.
I think that'll be very productive.
Okay.
Okay. This meeting is adjourned.